July 22nd, 1955. The day that Daniel Sousa becomes the first fallen agent of... Yeah, this doesn't feel quite right. One sec. July 22nd, 1955. The day that Agent Daniel Sousa becomes the first fallen agent of S.P.O.I.L.E.R.S. That's what the history books say, at least. But when you're fighting a war through time, sometimes history's gotta change. It's Agents of S.P.O.I.L.E., Season 7, Episode 4. Out of the Past. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Agents of S.P.O.I.L.E. So, yes, of course, spoilers are going to be coming your way. And as always, I do want to remind you about our quick jump index system. Just take a look, take a little gander down that section below, description. We'll have this whole review titleized, time-stamped, broken down into those easily digestible chunks. You can watch the end of the review first, you can watch the beginning last. You can watch this review in any order you'd like. Alright, so... let's get into this episode. Fun one! Back in time. Love the black and white. And I love how they connected in with Coulson basically rebooting. What does it say as he's talking to Gemma at the end? Yeah, color comes back and no more internal monologue. So yeah, I think it's kind of a perfect idea that this is a fluke from Coulson's perspective. And of course it carries on through the whole episode. It's not a big thing. It's just a fun touch. It just sort of it makes sense in world. And basically, this is kind of a fun little jump because in a way, this isn't so much a Chronicom episode as a Hydra episode, which I really love. We get a lot of the old, obviously spycraft and film noir mystery. Let's find the gadget from the spies before the Russians do, of a lot of the old 50s spycraft films. So really perfect for in time, has a great feel to it. But then also, again, while we're dealing with this war through Chronicoms, we're focusing more on our classic S.P.O.I.L.E. villain, Hydra, which, of course, feels really good from, like I've been calling, sort of a legacy episode. And we're seeing how these small changes start to have larger effects. And I love the fact, actually, how we're continuing to have the discussion about changing history, because outside of, again, the sort of general spy structure of the episode, that's really what we're talking about, is changing history. And if you are fighting through time, history is in a way going to be it's going to be a victim of that war. It's going to be a casualty, because you can't maintain everything. Even you talk about the butterfly effect, the small changes have big effects later on. Deke sort of counters that with the time stream. Oh, small things can, get overridden, but it's large changes that go on. Well, when you're fighting with Chronicoms that now are taking the place of people that have very important places in history, even if it's unrelated to that place in history, it has this warbling effect, The scientists that the Chronicoms took over in order to get into Area 51 last episode, well, that happens to have been Sousa's contact, which is why he was there. Again, nice sort of connection, which continues on to this big connection in with Howard Stark, and this is the death of Daniel Sousa. So I love how it starts out with Phil sort of trying to see history's changed, redirected on course, and yet throughout it we even get to a discussion, even that beautiful discussion with Mac about what should we do, and not necessarily being the orchestrator, just sort of being an advisor in that capacity. So there was a lot of very cool stuff happening in this episode, packaged inside just a glorious themed episode of black and white, of spycraft, of 50s, of classic villains and hideouts and misdirects, all along this larger picture of when can you change history? Can you change history? And I guess from a cheating standpoint, well, yeah, because you can save dead people by just taking them with you. And I like Sousa as part of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. time patrol here. This could be a fun addition. Alright, so let's kick things off, as we have been doing a lot lately, with our Scene of the Week for this week. And that is our discussion between Mac and Coulson about changing the future. You know, they've met Sousa, they're realizing what they can do, what the possibilities are. This is where Sousa dies, and yet they could change things. It's just a very... There are several things that happen within this scene that I think play to have much larger ramifications. One, just the discussion unto itself. They are realizing that within this fight that there is already casualties. Just being there already is starting to cause changes and ripples effects. Time is already starting to change and adjust from what they have expected to. Can they make changes? Can they save a good person who is bound to die, who is on top of something that is ready, that is an important part of where the future is going? In this case, Sousa already sousing out where Hydra is, and a great earlier exchange where he gets to that and everyone else is just, yep, oh yeah, definitely infiltrated by Hydra. Shocking moment. That that was a great little bit. Sometimes less definitely is more. But it becomes a very healthy discussion, I think. One is, while we have Phil trying to redirect history earlier on, here he's playing advisor. He's definitely letting Mac be the director, and I like that aspect of LMD Coulson, not stepping into leadership, but realizing this is him as an advisor goal, that he can't be the one to make those decisions. He can just give insight and perception. And of course, this discussion is being had throughout the episode with everyone else. We have Deke and Yo-Yo talking about racism. Again, another great section where it gets better through time, but never fast enough. Which was sort of a great line. And the sort of idea of the status quo sucks. I would like not to maintain this anymore. Next time there's a change, let's do it. You know, Daisy's already had these discussions. It's having repercussions of, can we continue to watch bad things happen and not change anything? And it's a short discussion, but it has some really interesting points. Especially, like I said, ramifications for a larger future. Because we get our nice Avengers reference to it, which is, of course, why this kicked up to the top. Where they're talking about Sousa's death inspiring a lot of others. Just like your death did for the Avengers, Mac tells Coulson. And even when he plays it off, well, let's not overstate it, but Mac reinforces it. But that's a fact. And I'm only sussing this out because with all of these time changes, there is certain theories going around through fandom that this could, in a way, reconnect in with the MCU by the end of the season. That they were going to leaving it at a point where if the MCU wanted to pick up any of these character storylines, Disney Plus, anything like that, that they would be in a position where they could do that. And the reference to the Avengers is interesting because as much as I would like real Phil to come back, him returning as an LMD does have advantages for connecting with the MCU. Because it would be a quick explanation. It's not Phil, it's an LMD version of Phil. And we already have Nick Fury in space with the Skrulls dealing with alien tech, talking about integration of alien tech. Does make sense. And more to the point, the last time we saw Phil in the Avengers, Stark himself makes the life model decoy joke to him. When Coulson's coming up the elevator and Stark picks it up, this is the life model decoy of Tony Stark. It's a perfect connection. He dies, they bring Stark or Coulson back as an LMD, even integrating alien tech. It with a line. They could explain that into the MCU. So I'm just saying, if they did choose to go in that direction, this is to me a little bit of a foreshadowing that perhaps this is where they're going. By the end, this will be post-snap, everyone returning blip, whatever, and we could have effectively the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in a position, should Feige choose to do it, to take these characters or some of these characters on moving forward into the MCU proper. And that is a reason to give it a thumbs up in my book any day of the week. And because he is lamenting being trapped in time, I can go no further without referring to poor Enoch, who, God, I was so excited to hear back. Perfect, again, being the bartender at the speakeasy, now the Krusty Canoe, or whatever that it's called, Hawaiian-themed, playing the bartender, was sort of perfect. I love that. And the fact that he ends up just being basically an operator is so sad, and he's lamenting even by the time it gets to Deke calling, who I'm sure is the most excited to actually hear his voice and definitely would want to do something to go and get him. At that point, Enoch is already just, again, with the combination of the guy's story of his career being shuffled off to now just being lamenting that he will always be the Lonely Chronicom, who, yes, had plenty of time to develop the technology, connect to the Zephyr as soon as that phone call came. But now he's just alone. I am so happy in the previews that he jumps back next week. That's all, I'm going to leave it at that. So, yeah, sad, just happy to see Enoch. Sad to see his state. Glad that he is definitely going to come back. We definitely got some more May information in this week. Kind of an interesting... I'm not really sure where they're going with May as she's sort of reintegrating systems. She's now developing sort of a literal empathy. Being able... She feels nothing. And yet now when able to touch people is able to pull out emotions from them. Does explain how everything that's going on. And I like the sort of discussion about she died in a place that had no emotion, that was out of life. You know, that's where she died. So now her coming back to life, she has that sort of connection. And the only connection she can have to life and emotion is by touch, which is kind of an interesting parallel in where Phil is, of course, who can in a way sort of feel life but isn't alive. We get that beautiful last scene, and I know so many people were so happy in the fandom that when Phil's systems were finally corrected and color came into his life, May was the first thing that he saw. May's what brings colors into Phil's life. You know it, I know it, we all know it. But that she kind of just shuts that down immediately by touching him like, I feel nothing, and walking off. I mean, again, it's harsh, but it does give them sort of an interesting play off where she needs the connection in order to feel something, and he can feel something but can't have that connection. Anyway, it's just kind of an interesting little thing. But I love that we're again, I love the connecting back to old seasons. This is definitely trauma carrying forward. And I'm curious to see where it's going to play out. But it's definitely going to be interesting. May's going to have to definitely do like the whole glove up thing. She can't touch anyone when she's out on a mission because she can't... well, no, it did work through the clothes when Gemma was touching her through her pants. So no, that's not going to work. It's proximity. Close touch proximity. That will be a problem for combat. So like I was saying, this episode a little bit more Hydra-focused than Chronicom focused. I mean, obviously, by the end, we see that sort of the two forces coming together, and that makes sense. Again, Legacy season, the Hydra is inextricably linked to S.P.O.I.L.E., so the fact that we still get to play, but especially through with the Malik family, now with Wilford. No one calls him Freddy anymore. Sort of, again, a perfect bookend here, both with Hydra and with the Malik family. Deke, seeing kind of the reality of what dear old Freddy has become, maybe rethinking, or definitely rethinking by the end of it, his not pulling the trigger 20 years before. I just sort of loved how that sort of played out. I love that Deke does this natural, hey, it was just a mistake, but of course, you're dealing with Hydra and they're going to shoot the guy next to you. There is no reason why the toaster salesman isn't going to be taken out either. So yes, redirected. And I loved how they actually sort of played it out. They gave a great explanation. It has been 20 years. This was one afternoon that he ran into this guy. So yeah, it would sort of make sense that maybe there's a familiarity, maybe there's something, but he wouldn't actually remember this guy's face, not without specifics maybe being brought up. So I kind of liked how they sort of was able to play that it wasn't Deke, it wasn't the same guy, and then of course give him the memory of exactly what happened and the shooting. I shot somebody behind you. It was this particular day and this particular thing. Sure, it kept Deke alive, but it does open the door nicely for the Chronicoms at the end. And it was just sort of a nice reconnect, and I love how they are continuing to play this connection throughout time, which again, is Time War, sort of makes sense, of the continuing of this family. And then again, Deke, great discussion there with Yo-Yo about racism and seeing the status quo. We are the agents of status quo, as Yo-Yo puts it. Well, again, by end episode, maybe not. And certainly between Deke and Yo-Yo seeing how the status quo sucks so much, maybe they're not going to just stand by and let it all happen without pushing a few buttons in the right direction. I can get that. A couple of cool moments in the train I wanted to touch on. One, the conversation between the Chronicoms and Phil, I thought was very cool. Again, small little bit, but important. This is kind of your classic hero temptation, especially in a way it reminded me a lot of Superman, which I believe Coulson is a big fan of. In the sense of Phil is kind of, again, he's an alien. He is not human. He is not the same. He is not tied to this world. And we have the Chronicoms, I don't know, again, I got sort of a Superman Brainiac-ish kind of feel, coming to tempt him. You don't owe these people anything. You aren't like them. You can see you're not tied to that frail mortality. You can see the purposelessness of their existence, the pointlessness of a lot of their actions. We will be nice to them. Just give us what we want. Again, this kind of classic temptation bit. And I just love how Phil, again, has that kind of classic Superman response. Humanity is what makes life worth living, worth even dying for. I am here to protect them. It's just, again, it was just kind of that classic old-time argument-y feel of just, you are above these people. Why do you protect them? Can I tempt you away? And Phil, again, is, if anyone is all about humanity, it is Phil Coulson. So even as an LMD with alien parts in him, he's going to have more humanity than any Chronicom could hope to have, for sure. And I think a lot of people too. So, I mean, it was a very cool scene. I really liked that appeal towards Phil as someone else when he is so much in on it, into this world. And then, of course, we also had just a great fight. I love, again, Sousa being the great spycraft, not being tempted by the pretty girl, seeing what's going on in the world around. And also, not only that we have a great fight where Sousa is showing that he is still quite capable and quite kick-ass, but also we got a lot of the kind of classic comedy, which was something that I think he played very well into the tone with Agent Carter. He gets grabbed from behind and pulled and punched in the face, and he gets almost one of those Jackie Chan-ish as well. Just goofy looks like, oh, that was a mistake, I just got hit, and then pulled down. And again, it doesn't pull out of the fight. It's just sort of like almost a really human response right in the middle of it. And then, of course, we get Daisy and Mac jumping in, and we get a nice little Quake powers and so on. Oh, by the way, somebody in the chat, and I'm sorry, I'll have to go back and double check who, mentioned that perhaps she's not using her powers so much because she doesn't have her gloves on. Because if she uses her powers, the more that it hurts, so maybe that's not why she's doing it. Great explanation. Totally fine with that. Also, she kicks ass all on her own, which she definitely did here. So that was great too. So yeah, it was just a good fun fight. Plus we had some nice hero temptation discussion. And that was all really, really fun. All right, just a couple of small things. One, and actually tied into my earlier Phil as an LMD discussion. I love that he actually got to be an LMD, a life model decoy. said, good thing about that, you can take a couple bullets in the back and it doesn't interrupt your day too much. Plus, you can spend a lot of time underwater. But yes, life model decoys were designed to take the place of people so they could be the targets. And they could be the one shot while the real people survived. So, yeah, Phil got to be an actual LMD, which was kind of cool. This is more of a thought on the ideas. Obviously, we have discovered that Gemma, not an LMD, as we may have thought. Maybe that was the reason why she was talking about so much time having passed, that she had in fact become an advanced LMD herself, but not being taken out by the EMP, and of course with all the emotions that she has, that doesn't seem to come into play. Plus, of course, May can feel off of her, so she is definitely human. So I wonder if perhaps all of the time that had passed wasn't in her body, but was in the framework. Well, more specifically, the Chronicom framework, the little alien machine that she and Fitz were stuck into, where the Chronicoms would go in and sort of explore their memory and everything. I am wondering if perhaps she and Fitz sort of, created a similar type of computer space where they could do years worth of work in almost no time passing. And thus, in a way, their experience memory is years and years, perhaps even decades, while their bodies didn't age at all because the actual time passing in the real world was minutes or hours or, again, some small equivalent period of time. Anyway, just a thought I wanted to share with you. Continuing on with our What is Up with Time and Gemma discussion. Phil welcoming Sousa to life after death at the end of the episode. Very appropriate. Sort of like the whole well, we've time jumped, here's the whole reality. You're dead, but you're not. You're with us. That's sort of the change. Got to live with it. Can't go back. Here's the new world. It's a lot to take in. But again, obviously, knowing about life after death, he is on the right plane between Phil and May now. And it's kind of a common theme around here. You could even say Fitz, so he's not around here. Gemma was on, alien planet. You know what I mean. A lot of life after death. That is the team. That's their subtitle there. Agents of S.P.O.I.L.E., life after death. All I kept thinking about the train was, Phil stole that poor sleeping guy's briefcase. It's really going to mess up his day. Maybe he did something important and he needed that paperwork. Again, small changes could have larger effects. Probably nothing big, but still, it's just kind of me. All right, and for our fan question this week, well, sort of a comment and then build off of a question. David Olson gave a great, I think, possible explanation for a reason why Yo-Yo can't use her powers. Maybe she's pregnant. Second heartbeat, she moves for one heartbeat length. If the other heartbeat comes in, maybe that's the reason they're syncing up. I think it's a brilliant explanation. And again, for a season, to me, about legacy, that would kind of be sort of a perfect legacy thing. So I think that would sort of be great. I'm going to assume that it's Max and not our previous dead agent there, which was all unfortunate. But still, I think that would be cool. And I think, David, that's a great explanation. He was also kind of laughing and commenting about how he doesn't think that everyone remembers May and Yo-Yo previously connecting and so on. And I commented about season 9, how I've mostly wiped that out of my memory. Let me sort of elaborate here for a moment on that, because I don't think it totally made sense. Yes, May and Yo-Yo have been together. They had actually some great emotional context discussions about relationships, I think, last season, which was great. I just really liked how they were working together, and it played in with story. So to me, and maybe it's just memory, but I really like how the two of them were dealing, not only working as agents, but also dealing with additional stories and working through issues. That sort of connection, I really like the two of them building up on top of. But more to the point, season 6, I don't think about a whole lot anymore. As time has passed, it seems more and more as a filler season. More just to the point that while we did get some great backstory about this war with the Chronicoms and some backstory on the monoliths and everything like that, between with this whole Sarge storyline and how that all wrapped up and how that never really connected in with Phil outside of season 5 and going through the dark dimension there with the monolith and what thought was the fear dimension. To me, there was so much of that season that just didn't have the emotional payoff. I didn't see where Sarge's storyline kind of went anywhere. I just don't think about it that much anymore. It had some cool little points, but a lot of the storyline to me just, I don't know, by the time it all wrapped up and I thought about it more, just didn't have the same kind of big impact. So that's sort of what I meant by wiping it from my memory. Again, it had some great moments and definitely some great foundational moves for what's going on with this season. But with that whole Sarge storyline, the way that it worked out, and the Pachakutik and the time travel, I don't know. I think it'll be reflected back as, again, one of those just middle seasons where, kind of like the first half of season 1. It was good, it had its stuff, but not as good as other seasons around it. Alright, so what we are left with is, a jump forward to 1973, or at least the 1970s. No More Mr. Nice Guy, Alex Cooper, came out in 1973. So, early 70s-ish. 73, 74, 75 could be. So while the team is there to see what else the Chronicoms are up to, one Chronicom in particular has been left behind. A beautiful, sniveling-looking 50s spy villain, which was sort of perfect, connecting there with Mr. Hydra himself, Wilfred Malik, to make some changes. Play with time, try and help Hydra out. And this is where I was talking about before of the interesting things of this sort of war through time. It's not just trying to fix the things that people are changing and trying to minimize how much you change. There's always going to be other stuff that you're not going to be aware of. There's problems. Again, leaving a Chronicom behind to go and mess with history. Now, the team's not only going to have to deal with what the Chronicoms want to do in the 70s, they have to deal with whatever ramifications of this one working with Hydra over these past 20 years has had. Now you can look at it from the timeline stuff as well. Anything that they have done has already been done, and thus, though the agents are going to deal with it, it's already been integrated in with history because that's the whole way that all of this has been playing out so far. Maybe. Or maybe stuff's about to get really funky, and there's going to be a lot that's going to have to be done in order to try and steer the timeline right by the time this is all completed. I don't know, but it's definitely going to leave things in a very interesting state by the time we get back next week. But that will wrap us up for now. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me with this review. And as always, if you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, you know where to put them. Right down in the description, in the comment section below. That's where it is. It's below the description, comment section. Go ahead, leave your thoughts. Tell me what you guys think about this episode. Do you love the whole thematic thing that they're doing with each of these episodes through time? Does it work for you? Does it not work for you? Where do you think we're going? Is Sousa going to stay with the team, or will he be lost before the end of the season in the midst of another time mission? What are you guys thinking? Also, what is our Chronicom doing with Hydra to mess up the time stream? Let me know what you guys are thinking. Throw those down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. And please, of course, fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. this Friday, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Really, it's been wonderful shows. Some great comments. Really enjoyed everybody jumping in, sharing your thoughts, being part of it. It's been a blast. The response has been really good. So please tell your friends. Come see the show. If you haven't, come and see it. It's right here, live, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. Fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. with myself, Don Willi from A Dawn of Ice and Fire, and Rob Stone from Smirking Gun Reviews. We're here every week at the end of the show. And be a subscriber. And that way you won't miss any of these shows or fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. You do that by pressing this button right here. And we'll go ahead and throw up a couple of our latest reviews right here for you to check out. So, that's it for me. D here, and out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.